Hi, everybody, and welcome to our info session on the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service and the Climate Insight Toolkit. I'm here with Sherry Young from ICLEI, and the two of us are going to be going over today how you can use the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service and Climate Insight Toolkit together to get some free support from some of our roster experts for your climate projects and infrastructure projects. So I think to get started, we could just do some introductions from myself and for Sherry. We're also joined on this webinar by Kira, who is one of the other portfolio managers from the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service. So my name's Dan. I'm the portfolio manager for Eastern Canada for the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service. I'm based out of Toronto, and I'm one of the two of us, myself and Kira, who will help connect local governments with infrastructure and other climate experts to give you some support on your projects. I'll pass it to Sherry, and then we can get an intro from Kira before we get started.
Hi, thanks for having me, Dan. My name is Sherry Young. I'm the project director for Climate Insight, which is part of the CTHI toolkit that the CRIS program is also through. So I'm based out of Calgary, Alberta today, but the work that ICLEI does, which is the organization I work for, takes place all over Turtle Island, and we'd like to recognize the lands that we're on and that we do work on with the inhabitants here. So since time immemorial. So that's who I am. We also have my colleague Lubna Seal on the call, who is our adaptation lead for the Climate Insight project, and she'll be kind of taking a look at some of your questions if they have to do with adaptation and climate insight. So thanks for having me, Dan.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you, and it's always great working together on this project. So I think we'll get started with just going over really quickly what the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service is, and if you're representing a local government today, how you can get some free support for your infrastructure projects to get climate change integrated into those projects, whether that's reducing your emissions or getting ready for the future impacts of climate change. Or if you're here as one of our potential or existing roster experts who are looking to provide support to our local governments. So as a quick introduction, the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service is being implemented and run by the Canadian Urban Institute. And the Canadian Urban Institute, where Kira and I are based out of, we're a national nonprofit and charitable organization, and we're dedicated to advancing best practices in city building. And a key part of that now is helping cities and local governments get ready for the impacts of climate change. We're a platform where policymakers, professionals, community leaders can all learn from each other, and our work does span across all of Canada. So communities, whether they're large or small, will all have the opportunity to leverage that national experience and learn from each other through our programming, including the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service. So we have a main focus on delivering research and programs that help communities address those challenges that they are facing. So the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service is a program that is run and funded by Housing, Infrastructure and Communities Canada. We help local governments with populations of about 30,000 or less, give them support through our climate experts to help these smaller communities with local needs and don't always have the resources that larger population centers will have, help them get support for doing infrastructure projects related to climate change. So we aim to provide expert climate advice directly to you and your local government teams to help you incorporate climate change resilience and mitigation into your public infrastructure projects. The expert advice that we're hoping to get you connected with helps ensure that climate considerations are included in your infrastructure projects, and that can help not only unlock funding opportunities, but can also help you build longer lasting, resilient infrastructure for the future. So the CRIS mission and vision is to increase the capacity of infrastructure decision makers to include low carbon resilience considerations in infrastructure projects across Canada, And the vision specifically is for small communities across Canada implementing high-value local infrastructure improvements that can withstand these specific climate challenges. Our key program features is that mainly it's no cost to participate if you are a local government. Access to all of our experts is free and is paid for through the Canadian Urban Institute with funding from Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada. The expert support and guidance that you'll receive is based on a match that is of no cost to you. So the Canadian Urban Institute will manage the match with one of our experts and help facilitate that working relationship so that you don't have to work on, spend a bunch of time on the scoping process, on managing contracts, and our goal ultimately is to take the administrative burden off of you for that. The program is also a flexible and customized service, so you can do this at any stage of planning for your project, and we try to give solutions that are tailored to your specific climate considerations, local community features, and problems that you're facing uniquely within your community. So let's talk a bit about program eligibility. The main criteria that we have we have three main criteria that we're looking at. The first is population size. We're looking for participation from communities of about 30,000 people or less. There is some flexibility there, especially if you're an upper tier municipality or regional government that is looking to serve a lower tier government or local community that does have a population of 30,000 or less. So if you have specific questions about whether or not you're eligible, it would be best to contact us directly through our email, which I'll show, and we can go through that contact info towards the end, or you can go through our website and submit a service request, and we'd be happy to help walk you through that process and figure out program eligibility down the line. Second piece of eligibility is that you're planning an infrastructure housing project in one of our eligible asset classes. We cover a lot of different asset classes through this program, including transit, water systems, buildings, parks, green infrastructure. It's all typically the types of projects that you already work on. And the last piece is about council approval or the existence of a project in a multi-year capital plan. If you have your project in either of those things, either with council approval or in a capital plan, you're good to go to submit a service request to receive that free expert support. The only other piece of project eligibility that we need to go through is that your project has gone through ICLEI's Climate Insight Toolkit, which ultimately is why you're here. We're going to go through now what that toolkit looks like, how you use that to effectively identify potential projects or identify how climate change is relevant to infrastructure projects that you already are planning on doing. And then once we get a look at the Climate Insight Toolkit, we'll show you how to connect that to a CRIS service request submission so that you can go from learning about your project, how you can integrate climate change into it, to actually receiving that free expert support. So I'll pass it to Sherry from there, who will show us what the toolkit's looking like.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, as Dan mentioned, Climate Insight is one part of that three-part toolkit put on and sponsored by Housing and Infrastructure Communities Canada to meet kind of that those resource gaps and those knowledge gaps that are keeping municipalities that have limited resources from implementing climate resiliency and climate mitigation projects in their infrastructure issues. So the intent where the expert roster is going to walk people through and really support those communities who are ready for it with projects. If you don't know where to start, or you have want to look at an idea for your project and you're not sure which infrastructure is impacted, or maybe you need some more information on how to feed into the CRIS project before you talk to an expert or before you complete the form, Climate Insight is your one-stop destination for infrastructure data, recommendations, tools, and things like that. So I just want to make sure, can you see my screen? Okay, you can see the Climate Insight homepage. Yes? Okay, so this, if you visit climateinsight.ca, and my colleague, I have a couple colleagues on the call, so maybe one of them can pop the link right in the chat in case you want to navigate yourself there. But what I've got is the Climate Insight landing page. So when you get here, there are three main components for the Climate Insight landing page. The first component here in the middle is get guided assistance on a project. And this is really where you can, thanks, Nathan. This is really where you can get some support. It takes you through some questions about your project or about your municipality. And we'll walk through that in a minute. But what I like to start with is on the map. So maybe is there somebody on the call from a municipality that would like to take a look? They want to put forward a project, or they want to know where to start. They're thinking of a project for CRIS, and we can start with entering their community in the map. There's crickets over there. I know there's a few of you on there because we took a look at the registration list. Anybody want to pop it in the chat or unmute and let us know? I can't see the chat there. So is there anybody in there, Dad? No.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to put, then I will pick a random small municipality that I can do. Dan, have you got somebody that you were looking at or talking with recently that you want to look at?
Yeah, sure. Why don't we go with the town of Picton in Prince Edward County? I know someone from their team was registered to participate, so if they're in the call, they can get that support right off the bat.
Great. Okay. So as you see, I put in town of Picton. This zooms into your area. So what you'll see when it first comes up on the map is you'll see this base layer of color. And what this base layer of color is a social vulnerability map, actually. So as you can see on the side here in the legend, it'll tell you this social vulnerability index tells you that anywhere where there's a higher, like more of a red color, those people are in higher vulnerability. And anywhere where it's more blue, they're in lower vulnerability. So it looks like in the Picton area, which checks out for many more urban municipalities, is that you don't have anybody in very high vulnerability, but usually it's around a downtown area or somewhere like that, where some residential instability or some lower income folks might be in existence. So maybe they are elders, maybe so they've reduced mobility and reduced income, things like that. That's what this yellow spot is. And the neat thing about this, I'll talk about these green lines in a minute, but the neat thing about this is that the next thing you could do is if we aren't sure what the impacts, the hazards are for Picton or for area, we can open up this legend on the side and choose some of these climate proxies for extreme heat, potentially, and take a look at. So that's what extreme heat looks like on the baseline, and we can for days of maximum temperature. So currently in Picton, or as the baseline, the days of maximum temperature aren't more than 30 degrees Celsius, or maybe two per year, right? Let's look at this area here. Looks like, yeah, you get 4 days over 30 a year. But as this chart shows, which you just get from clicking on an area in the map, by mid-century, you're going to get way more. You're going to get a number more days, and then by the end of century, you'll get way more, almost 70 days. Right? That's projected, and this info is all taken from climatedata.ca. So if you need more details on that, you can go and look and dig into these numbers a little bit further. But that's what that is. So if we're worried about extreme heat potentially in Picton, let's look at mid-century because we're building some infrastructure about that. You can look at that by itself. So, heat kind of hits everybody evenly, but you can also combine it with that social vulnerability index we talked about earlier. So we remember that the people in this center area that maybe are at higher vulnerability to social factors will also be have higher impacts from climate hazards, right? So those are those people in this area. The other climate proxies are on here. I'm assuming because I see some water here that flooding might be an issue. So if you've got some issues around flooding, it looks like your maximum one-day precipitation is about in the 50s for these areas. And if you want to look at those in combination with maybe people with some residential instability, which is one of the pillars that leads into this, we can see that the people in this area are likely to be more impacted by overland flooding, which makes sense with this water body coming in here, which is what I think that is. So if the person from Picton wants to pipe up and see if this resonates, is this to kind of fact check and see if this makes sense based on what you know about your community, you're welcome to chime in either in the chat or unmute. But that gives you some information on kind of maybe where you want to focus. So then the next thing that you want to look at is that if we're dealing with flooding and we know that kind of there's going to be some flooding in this area over here, this circle up here gives you the infrastructure. Now, if these infrastructure layers are pulled from the StatsCan open OID, open infrastructure database. And so if we don't have some for your area, it's possible it's just we didn't get it from StatsCan. But it looks like there's some pedestrian and cycling pathways that kind of go along the water here and kind of go past this this area here. And if you have people who are maybe mobility challenged, if that's why they're at a higher risk of social vulnerability, or they are lower income, so more reliant on foot transportation or bicycles, you might want to focus some transportation infrastructure on ensuring that those pathways are kept open in case of flooding. It doesn't look like we have a lot of data for the bridges and tunnels in this area, and I'm going to assume you don't have public transit in a smaller facility like that, but we might have your wastewater and stormwater facilities that are also look like they're located in that area of higher flooding, right? So we know there's people in that area vulnerable to social factors. We know that that area looks like it's a little more vulnerable to flooding, and we know that your wastewater and stormwater facilities are in that area, which is a good place for stormwater facilities, but also puts them at maybe an adaptation risk. So knowing that we have stormwater facilities, if you click on this, it'll give you kind of what that is. So it's a wastewater treatment facility. I can't tell if it's a combined one, but if you scroll over, you can get some more information on what that is. Someone working in your community would have more information on what that is. So if we want to focus on that stormwater infrastructure, that gives you a snapshot of what's vulnerable, and you can go through and play with the different layers. There's educational facilities that are brand new and released too, that we just launched in April. There's healthcare facilities, and some of these are they might be hospitals, or they might be I can't tell, sorry, but this is what I want. The different healthcare facilities, so ambulatory healthcare. This is new for us, nursing and residential care facilities. So all sorts of stuff if you want to prioritize your specific buildings. Just because it's a little bit simpler to go through the stormwater facilities, but we could absolutely focus on, or we could look at recreation sport facilities. So this, I know probably every area in Canada has a local arena or a community arena or some kind of space there, but this will tell you that we have some cluster summary. That's what I want. Oh, it's not giving me the exact data right now. But what this will show me is what the kind of, it looks like there's a trail here. These are a variety of recreation options. This one's another trail. So I'm not sure if there's an arena in here somewhere, but it could be a community center or an arena or a trail or a sports field. So that's kind of all lumped into recreation sport facilities. Let's go back to the stormwater facilities. And now that you have this snapshot of this stormwater facility subject to overland flooding in an area of that might be making a bit more vulnerable, we can go back to this tool over here. Now the solutions finder will ask us a series of questions about that area. So if we want to look at that wastewater plant, we'll start here. That was in PEI. So we're going to answer a couple of questions. Oh, it looks like Ashley made a comment over there. Yeah, flooding and drought.
Yeah, flooding is going to be one of the big ones, which is something we're hearing, especially in for Eastern Canada. Flooding seems to come up very regularly as a common issue.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? Anything close that we know that water and extreme precipitation is going to go up. Like that's something we kind of know, and it's good to check for your area how much that's going to go up by. So that makes sense, Dan. And thanks, Ashley, for chiming in over there.
And Sherry, Picton in Ontario.
We're in PEI, Picton PEI.
Yeah, this is Picton, Prince Edward County, Ontario.
Yeah. Thanks, Nathan. There's a Picton in Ontario too?
Yes.
That is the Picton we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. No, we have someone on the call from PEI, so that's why we went to that Picton. But yeah, also when you're looking up on the map, make sure you get the right the community that you're working on, because I know we have lots of communities all over Canada that have the same name. So make sure you're zooming into the right location, and I hope I did. on the map there. Is the population of Picton, do you know, Dan or Ashley, maybe you can chime in what the population of Picton is? Is it right in this 5,000 to 25,000 category?
Yeah, it's about 5,000.
Okay. Is it under 5,000 or over?
I don't know the exact number, but probably a little bit over.
Okay, we'll just put it there because that's where most of the things, but most of the people that apply for Dan's program are kind of in that area. And so, yeah, feel free to jump in anytime, Ashley, if you want to give me some guidance on the questions for your community. I might put you on the spot a little bit here. So because we looked at the overland flow, and because we have options, we're going to look at mitigation. You can go through and look at mitigation tomorrow, but today we're doing adaptation. So we're going to choose that in a few minutes. But if you want to learn more about mitigation, about climate risk, about nature-based solutions, you can see something else in the Learn section. You can also access it here. So I'm talking a lot and quickly, and I wanted to point out that you'll notice that some of these questions align. If you've looked at the registration form for the CRIS program, a lot of these questions will help feed into that. And I'm going to quickly open that up just in case you wanted to take a look. Where is the registered infrastructure project? If you're looking at Dan's project, and Dan just put the link, I think, in the chat, I'm going to pretend it's me, but I could put Ashley on there if we wanted to put her on the spot. Let's pretend this is me too. I'm going to fill out just the first page of the form really quickly, just so we can walk through, because I wanted to point out that as you're filling out some of these things, if your community has already got a climate action plan, you can answer that. These are things, the information you would know in your community. If you've already identified an expert you want to work with, and the languages you can operate in. But this next page, once you've gotten through here, oh, sorry, province, I'm in Alberta. But the next page, once you've gotten through here, it's going to ask you a bit more about your project. So that's where Climate Insight can support that. So this is where we went through and we thought we were going to look at that wastewater plant. So here we're going to say, okay, we would like to, and Dan, you can help me with some of the verbiage around this, but we would like to implement some resiliency against flooding for our wastewater treatment plant. That be your problem statement?
Yeah, the point of the form that we have, and for the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service, we call these service requests because we're really interested in making this as low barrier as possible. And at the moment, we're not a demand limited service. So if you have a project that fits that eligibility criteria that I went over before, we're very happy to give you support. So the purpose of these questions is not to try and screen you out or add a significant amount of work to you to get services and support. It's really just to focus on the project and make sure that we're putting some boundaries around what the project could be that you'll be receiving expert services for. So something that's targeted, like this problem statement, is definitely enough to help us get started with getting you matched up with one of our experts.
Amazing. And so if you don't know where to start, and that's where you'd like to start, you can go and take that snapshot from Climate Insight, and it gives you the information to fill in this first box. Right? Awesome. And again, yeah. And then how would you like to develop the project? This part here is where your solutions finder comes in. So I'm assuming you guys that it's flipping between my tabs. So right now you can look at the registration page, correct? Yeah. And that would go back here. So Picton, is it in PEI, is it a rural community? Do you identify as rural? Ashley?
The one in Ontario? Yeah, it's rural.
The one in Ontario. Oh, you're in Ontario?
Picton. I'm in Ontario, Prince Edward County.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were in Picton PEI. Okay. All right, we'll go rural. We'll go through this. Okay, adaptation. Okay, and we're gonna focus on flooding hazards for adaptation. So we'll go here because this is the adaptation workshop here. We said flooding, and we were going to talk about overland flooding. Even though we saw that we can see that maybe it's on the coast, but let's go overland flooding.
Sherry, do you mind going back just so we can go through some of the other options that are available if people are interested in other adaptation projects?
Oh, so the other hazards that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I can slow down. So today we chose flooding, but the other hazards that you can get addressed are, like we showed on the map, you can look at extreme heat and see if that's going to impact your area. We have wildfires. So the proxy on the map for wildfire is kind of number of consecutive dry days, which sets up for wildfire conditions. And then we have permafrost thaw, and on the map we have number of ice days. So if that's reducing your number of ice days, then that's increasing your likelihood of permafrost thaw. So those are the hazards you can choose. Today we're going to choose flooding. And because flooding has multiple types and they can come from different areas, we're going to choose overland flooding. But if it was picked in PEI, we'd maybe worry about overland flooding or coastal flooding, or maybe if you have a river going through your community, maybe it's riverine flooding. So we're going to go pluvial overland flooding. Okay. And then here is where we were talking about the different kinds of asset types. So if you're looking at, if you did have an arena in your area, then you would choose buildings. If you have some community housing, or you're worried about some of the public housing infrastructure, or you have a fleet building or any type of contained building, your municipal administrative building, you would choose options for building. If you're looking at roads and other transportation, bridges and tunnels, which you could see over on the map, if you're looking for pathways and other kinds of transportation, you would look for options in transportation. If you're looking for mobile, things that impact mobile assets, such as your municipal fleet, maybe you have a public transit system, but we're pretty small here. But any of those kinds of things, they would be here. I know when I was in Okotoks, we had an on-demand transit system. So even though we were only 30,000 people, we did have a couple of hybrid buses that would go and pick people up. So maybe you have a small public transit or on-demand system. The other types, Dan mentioned green infrastructure. So this is your parks and your bioswales and things like that, your solid waste facilities. But today we looked on the map and we saw that our stormwater or wastewater treatment plant was right close to the water there. So we're going to choose this one. And this just drills down to see what kind of water infrastructure it is. We're going to choose wastewater here. So as you can see from those questions, they do align with, like, you can put some more things in here if you'd like, but it's going to help you develop this project. It's an existing wastewater treatment plant. If you don't know the answers to the questions, you can say both or either. We don't know if there's room around there to guard it from things, or we don't know if it's below ground. How long do you have to implement adaptation options? Do you need to address this right away? Are you at high risk right now? Or up to 5 years, or up to, do you have 10 years? Like, you know, it's going to increase. It's going to be by mid-century, but right now you have some time to work with it. So we can choose that we have more than 10 years, and then it'll give us all of the options. If we're so this is a new feature as a release 2. So prior to this, you'd get to this point and it would just give you a list of all the options that may or may not be, that may be applicable for wastewater treatment facilities subject to flooding. But new for release 2 is if you keep going and answer questions, anytime you click this little eye, it'll give you some little tool tips and let you know what's going on. But if you say yes here, it'll rank the options based on your answers to the question. So it'll tell you what's most applicable and what's least applicable, which might help you answer the next question on the box on the CRIS application form. So maybe we don't have much of a budget. Maybe it has to fit within operational costs, or maybe we know we have some money coming from federal funding. So we're going to say it's between $500 and $2 million to try to fix this wastewater treatment plant, or we know we have a turnaround coming up and some funds put aside for that. So it has to fit, but it has to fit within that that pre-projected turnaround cost. So we can click this range of asset. What are your organization's asset management requirements? Maybe you need the solution to last at least 50 years because it's a wastewater treatment plant, or maybe it's a temporary solution and you're gonna move it anyway, so you only need it to last 25 years while the other one's being built, or 10 years, right? So. And if you don't know, that's okay. It'll give you all of the options and you can consider them because that's where you are in your project. If you have a mandate for green infrastructure or natural solutions, Dan touched on this earlier, especially for stormwater. We're looking at wastewater right now, but especially for stormwater or some of the building things, if you have a mandate to put in natural solutions, green roofs, rain gardens, bioswales, if you want to also increase your green space along with along with your gray infrastructure, resiliency to flooding for your gray infrastructure, then you can say yes, because we want to ensure that is included. So yes, we want to prioritize green infrastructure solutions. This won't take other solutions out. It'll just rank your green infrastructure solutions a bit higher because they will match. They can align with your program. If you'd like to address multiple climate hazards, if we also wanted to address heat, we could say yes, and it would rank options that deal with both of those things a little bit higher. Low carbon resilient solutions. If you have a mandate, you also want to look at reducing energy efficient, increasing energy efficiency or reducing emissions from your wastewater treatment plant. This will prioritize lower emissions or lower emissions or options that will help you meet your net zero goals for your community. So if we say yes there, it just ranks them higher. It doesn't eliminate them. And then we're only looking at a single asset, but if you were in a different asset group and you're looking at multiple trails across your community, you could choose similar assets in many locations. Or if your wastewater treatment plant also had a sports facility beside it, or a building, an administrative building, or whatever else, we could choose one location with many assets. So I'm going to just choose all, because you might have some other buildings on that location. And this just tells you where you want to keep how much room you've got, and where you want to do your alterations. So if you want to just upgrade the wastewater treatment plant itself and you have no room or no budget to do anything outside of that, then you choose direct alterations. If you can do things on the site generally, you can choose immediate vicinities. If you have some space in the local area or for your town as a whole and you want to prioritize that, you can choose these. But we're going to put all or unknown just for ease of communication here. And so this is what it does. So as you can see, for wastewater and stormwater plants, marsh restoration is actually a way to hold some of that water and reduce the amount of stormwater going into if you have a combined stormwater wastewater facility, it'll reduce the amount of stormwater going into your wastewater facility and both reduce your emissions and your energy use, and it'll keep it from flooding. So there's because we prioritize nature-based solutions, there's lots of them on there, and Dan's programs supports natural solutions and nature-based solutions and guidance on those. So make sure you don't forget about those things. These are coming up in the top green because we prioritize them when I answered all the questions with no input from you guys. I have a bit of a bias on natural infrastructure, but the system doesn't. You get to choose how high that's ranked for you. The ones in the blue here are worth looking at. These are some options you might want to integrate based on the answers that I gave in this walkthrough. And then these yellow ones probably need a little bit more digging. They might not exactly fit based on the answers I gave, but they could possibly, because they're for flooding, match your community's welfare. So it just match your community's goals. So it just gives you a list ranked by applicability based on the questions. And now you can go back to pick a couple of those and say, I'd like to develop this project with I'd like to investigate some of these ways of preserving the resilience. Would that tie in there, Dan? Is that a good answer? You're on mute. There you go.
Thanks. Yeah, that's definitely helpful for us when we're both helping you narrow down what your project is going to do and ultimately matching you with one of our experts. The more detail that you can provide about the objectives that you're looking to achieve with your project, where you'd like to focus the efforts in the investigation from your expert match, all that helps us to make a better match and help you get better fit services. I think there's also additional details when you go into each of those options. If you feel like there are specific options that either align with the current plans that you have in your capital plan, with your sustainability plan or climate action plan, if you have one of those already, getting those additional details from the Climate Insight tool are very helpful on the application. You're also very welcome to drop a link or a PDF export of this page in your application using the share link that's at the top of this list.
Yeah. So you could either cut and paste the whole link from the top of the page, or you can use your share and use the link here and copy and paste this directly into your application. That's what you're saying, right, Dan?
Yeah, that's really helpful for us.
Good. And these are the ones I'd like to look at. And then your expert can actually drop that right into their browser. And so you're speaking about the same things and you have the same language. So if I just pick, as Dan said, there's more details in each of these. We call these cards. There's more details in each of these cards. So I'm going to click on marsh restoration because that'll filter out the water before it hits your wastewater treatment plant if you have a combined system. And it'll show you an image of that. It gives you a description of what it does and how it helps. Because we prioritize low carbon resilience, it's going to tell you what the mitigation and adaptation benefits are for that, kind of how it works, some of the big things that come in for planning, so that you know that when you're talking to the expert and they don't, right? It gives you a head start so that you understand some of that. And it's written for users, not for climate specialists. You do not have to be a climate specialist to use this. This is your climate specialist, right? This program, this platform. And then some of the things you need to consider. This applies to all sorts of infrastructure types. It applies to your different water utilities. It addresses multiple hazards. And then these are some of the co-benefits that will come along with that, that you can consider and understand. And like, oh, these are benefits. These are other things that we'll touch on that aren't necessarily adaptation related, but will help you with other things in your community. Some trade-offs. If I pick this, what can't I do? What are the things that make implementing this harder? And some of the cost variations, some EDI factors. Who do I need to consider? Who will this impact? Who do I need to think about in this situation? And some other factors impacting the feasibility. How do I implement this? Do I have enough space? Do I have the right soil? What will I have to manage invasive species? Things that it can exacerbate your cost or your capacity. How am I doing for time? Okay.
Yeah, I think we're doing well.
Okay.
So in your application, in your service request, the details and the information that's provided through the Climate Insight card for a particular solution can be very helpful for us to match you with an expert and develop a scope of work for your project. So depending on the details that are most relevant to you, the components of that card and the details for that solution that are most relevant, experts that we match you with can help you develop options for you for how to actually implement that in practice through concept design options that you can then later on with your own team turn into either a pre-feasibility study or a detailed design that could be used and eventually go to tender through your own teams. But highlighting your own priorities or getting a better sense of what your priorities would be or key concerns through those cards are very helpful and are definitely things we're looking, or that would be helpful for us to see in your service request.
Awesome. So now we've answered that box of questions. This is stuff you will know whether the project has council approval, right? And you can put your link in. If it's included in your multi-year capital plan, maybe it isn't, maybe it is. I think you have to have some kind of plan going forward. But and then is it currently funded? This is a requirement to answer, right, Dan? No?
It's a requirement to answer, but your projects do not have to be funded. It just has to exist in a real plan through a council approval or that multi-year capital plan.
Yeah. So you can put some more information about what the approval or support is here. And then as you can see, some of these questions are very similar to the Climate Insights. You already would have had them put them in your question answer. Their ranges are a bit different, but we'll choose maybe this one because it's a similar range to what we chose on the other page. The asset class, we're looking at stormwater management, right? And wastewater. Well, we're looking at wastewater, but it's also stormwater if we have a combined system, which we're assuming. You can choose as many of these as are applicable. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, that's right. And green infrastructure is also included on that.
Yeah.
So
we'll click that
as many or as few as you'd like.
Yeah. And then as you see, the climate hazards, which we addressed before, we are looking at inland flooding, right? Because that's the same as overland flooding. So the terminology might be a bit different, but that's what we're referring to there, right? And so this one we'll do this tomorrow. So if you're coming tomorrow and you can see the walkthrough for energy efficiency, you can see stuff here. But as we know, some of the choices are, we'll do carbon capture and storage. So they'll do carbon sequestration if you do a nature-based solution. So we can maybe check that off if we wanted to. Do you have access to expertise on designing it for climate resilience, or is that what you're getting from the CRIS program, right? If you don't, awesome. That they can put that in there, right? And that's what Dan will do. And then Dan's team will do. And then which departments? This is all stuff that your local knowledge will feed into, right? To finish this. This is all your local knowledge. Climate Insight can answer the other questions. This is where you use your own local knowledge for this. Are there any other? I don't think there's any more questions that feed in from Climate Insight on this.
Nope. All the other questions are relevant to the specific local government or how your own municipality or local government connects to others. But after we get through this page and you submit it, there's a few other questions that give you the opportunity to tell us more about yourself, ask any questions about the program, or provide comments related to your service request that would be helpful for us to know. But after you've completed this, you're basically ready to submit the service request, at which point our team will review your service request. We might reach out if there are any additional details that we need, but generally speaking, if you've gone through the Climate Insight Toolkit, you're ready to submit that service request. We'll be able to get you set up with expert support very quickly.
Good. So then we'll go to the next. Oh, I have to choose something here. Departments. Maybe you're the public works, you're water, and you're working on water. So we'll choose that. We'll assume that you're that representative. And we'll go to the next page here. And this is where you finish it up and submit it. So as you can see, this Climate Insight will help you answer the questions you might not have answers to. The Climate Insight is your in-house climate specialist that will help you answer some of the questions, get you into CRIS for your infrastructure project. The other thing you can do here, now that you've gone through here, is if you want to click this button and save the results from this, you can do save for later, and it'll ask you to create an account where you can store all of your all of your results from your solutions finder. There's some other tools on here. It'll save some results from our baseline emissions calculator, which we'll talk about tomorrow. It won't save anything from the map. Unfortunately, you have to relook every time. But yeah, so all you have to do to create an account is answer a couple of questions. And then these questions here will automatically populate your solutions finder. So you don't have to answer the same questions every time for a couple of these. So once you submit that, you have your account. You can save the results to your account and any specific options cards or tools cards you'd like to see. And so when you're when you're matched with your expert through the CRIS and you submit that application, you have this in your toolkit. You can remember to saved. So when your expert calls you and you're matched with one, you're both speaking the same language and referring to the same document and options. And that's how Climate Insight will feed into your CRIS. There's a couple other tools on here that you that if you want to learn a little bit more about it, here on the Learn page, there are some overviews of the different things that will impact your project. So if you really would like to learn a little bit more about risks and costs and emissions and how to integrate equity into your project there, and what nature-based solutions are, because lots of people, this is a new concept. Infrastructure is stuff you build, not necessarily stuff you grow. So to learn a bit more about nature-based solutions, you click in here, and it has some links and some resources and some tools about those. And then training and events. Stuff like this webinar, which is going to be recorded, will now be hosted there, so you can rewatch it another time. If I spoke too fast, which I do, and I went through and you're like, hey, what was that page she was on before? You can go back and rewatch it because this will be posted later, and we'll link to that. And wherever we're going to be, if we're going to be in your community at a forum, if you want to join us at some of the upcoming conferences, we're in Quebec this week at the CNAM. And we'll be at CAMA at the end of the month. So if you're going to some of these, you can look for us. You can watch for us at some of these conferences and watch some training sessions. So that's Climate Insight in a nutshell. And yeah, I can pass it back to Dan, because I think there were some questions that came in that we want to.
Yeah, we'll have some time for some Q&As. I just want to go through quickly what the process is like once you've used the Climate Insight Toolkit and then made a submission to CRIS for that expert support. So once you have submitted a project, someone from our team, either myself or Kira, will get in touch with you to schedule a project intake meeting where we'll talk about your submission and learn a bit more about your project and what your priorities are to help make a match with you with one of our experts. After that, our team matches you with an expert. We reach out to experts and receive quotes from them, eventually working through all of that administrative process with the expert so that you don't have to. Once we've made the match and confirmed the match with you, then you can start working with the expert directly and receive options analysis and other reports to help you go from a project idea to some specific concept design options that you can later turn into full projects or potentially use to apply for funding to complete those projects. If there are any other questions, feel free to raise your hand or send us a message in our chat. You're also absolutely welcome to reach out to us at climateready@canrp.org, or visit our website, climatereadycanada.ca. We'd be very happy to help you out and get you some support for your infrastructure projects. And if you're joining us as one of our experts, feel free to reach out to us as well, either to get some more information on our next intake period or get added to our communications list so you'll know first when we open up that intake period next.
I'm just putting the French link, both the links to I think the Climate Insight English link was posted earlier. You can visit that and then switch to French if you like, but I'm also posting my contact information in the chat. If anybody would like to discuss, would like to contact us for information about that. And we'll be doing this all over again tomorrow for the mitigation pathway, the mitigation project. So.
Yep, so definitely join us tomorrow. You can also join us on Thursday for the Canadian Urban Institute City Talk, where we will be going into more detail about Climate Ready Infrastructure Service. So we'd love to see you there for that as well.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me, Dan.
Yep, very happy to have you, Sherry. And thanks everyone for your time. Thanks for joining.